Hi, everyone, and welcome to Pepper Content Presents Top of the Funnel, where content conversations begin. The show where we invite senior marketing leaders across industries to talk us through the role of content in their businesses. There was a time when content was a nice to have support function, but not anymore. Content and content marketing has become central to marketing. From meeting rooms to boardrooms, everyone wants to know content plan kya hai. And this change is what we are trying to capture on our show, Top of the Funnel. I'm your host, Natasha Puri, and today's guest is the head of content at MoEngage, a customer engagement platform that caters to companies like Airtel, Flipkart, Ghana, just to name a few. Our guest, Akshita Kamath, was featured in LinkedIn Content 50, also named as one of the most influential content marketers by World Marketing Congress, and was on the top CX 100 list by Adobe. She headed content at Simply Learn and then went on to join MoEngage about 2 years back. Welcome to Top of the Funnel, Akshita. I'm very excited to learn from you.
Hi, Natasha. Thanks for the lovely introduction and super excited to be here.
That's great. And we'll jump right into it.
Mhm.
I've gone through your LinkedIn profile. I've kind of read a bit about you, and what I'd like you to do best is talk me through your journey. Right. So I don't think. At least anywhere in India, anyone ever dreams कि मुझे बड़े होके content marketer बनना है. At least not right now. I mean, hopefully 10 years down the line, people are thinking like that. But I want to understand, how did you venture into content marketing? What was the original plan? How planned was this as a career move?
Yeah, I think this you are spot on. There was definitely no plan to venture into content marketing. As I've grown up and then graduated, there was definitely no space called as content marketing. The plan was to be an engineer. I've graduated as an engineer and then took up my first job in an engineering kind of a role as well. But I think somewhere down the line the transition happened, and I would attribute the reason for the transition back to my younger days or back in school, where I used to love to read and write a lot. So I would read like crazy. I was a very voracious reader. I've probably read the entire Famous Five and Secret Seven and Nancy Drews, and then graduated from there. So I used to read a lot, and by the time I got into high school, I started writing. But somewhere after that, I think science took over, and I got into engineering, finished my engineering, and so content writing sort of took a backseat there. So what happened as part of my career is, after a couple of years into my career, I saw an opportunity as a technical writer with a company that was into the electrical space. So for me, this was the perfect mix, because I would get to use the knowledge that I already had, and writing sort of struck a chord immediately, and I just grabbed the opportunity. And this was early days, early technical writing days. So I just made use of the opportunity that came my way. From there, I moved on into Visuri, where I joined as a technical writer, but over a period of time, um, the role transitioned into marketing content, and from then content marketing itself. From there, Simply Learn, and then now MoEngage. So that's really how the journey has been. I think as the field itself has matured, right from initially viewing this as in a space where you would write website pages and blogs, to a full-fledged marketing function. I think I've sort of grown and moved with the way the industry has grown. So
So
yeah,
it's
that's my
been
journey.
a journey from content writing to being a content marketer, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I mean, has it been, would you say it's very self-taught, learned on the job sort of a thing?
Yeah, definitely. I think, look, even now, I don't know if there are very formal sort of courses that are easily available, which tell you a lot about content. Whatever is there probably sets the premise, which wasn't there back then. So someone who wants to get into content marketing today probably has a series of courses or some online education available to understand what the space is. So a lot of this has been self-taught. A lot of this has been through peers and networks and finding out what some other folks are doing. So it's mainly been that way. It's mainly been that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of it has been experiments as well on the go.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. And at a later point, we can discuss how that has changed in your career, how you are seeing that change. But for now, let's just move on to what it means to be a content marketer at MoEngage. So if you can talk me through what your roles and responsibilities are, and how is content marketing actually structured at MoEngage?
So I oversee the content marketing function right now, and I've been with MoEngage couple of years, right from the early days that we started creating this function. So currently, if you look at what I look after, I think we look after definitely the marketing content, which is a huge chunk of everything that we do, right from blogs to say websites to demand gen content, gated content, videos, podcasts, the entire gamut. Where we're not producing content, we are working very closely either as a consultant or as an editor. Let me give you an example. So when we do a lot of events, webinars, we are not always poised to create the content from scratch. Many times we're either repurposing something that's already available, or we are sort of supporting the regional or the field teams to execute that. So there we step in as consultants, giving the overall guidance, telling them what can be spoken about, what are the high level data points that we have, things like that. There are other areas where we act as internal editors for other teams. So when there is, say, the customer success team that wants to put out a report for the clients, for their set of accounts, or they want to put out some benchmarks. So there we come in as editors, we consult with them in terms of how the design should be, what the language should be. So there are multiple roles, but if I were to sum it up, I would say that for anything that is content that goes out of MoEngage and has a certain level of importance, our team is definitely involved.
Where do you feel content fits in your overall marketing? So since you're managing content, I'd love to know, how is content part of the puzzle? Is it all encompassing? Is it a very clear sort of structured role, or how is it?
So the way we look at content, like I said, it's outside larger than marketing as well. So of course it's a very important part of marketing. It is one of the key levers within the marketing team, and we've seen good success over the last 2 years. We've Whether it's in terms of generating a pipeline or it's in terms of building brand and thought leadership, we've had our successes. So I would be very confident in saying that it's definitely a very central piece to the marketing function itself. But like I said, we look at content beyond marketing. It's also part of, like I mentioned, customer advocacy maybe, or customer information, customer engagement. It's also part of sales enablement. So content is across different functions at MoEngage. So we sort of collaborate on the product marketing side, we collaborate on enablement content that's used for the sales folks. We also work on sometimes support even the employer branding team once in a while, maybe in an editorial or consulting role, but we sometimes even support there. So content works across different functions. And within marketing, I think if we look at the goals that we're achieving, I think definitely we are contributing to top of funnel kind of engagement. We are definitely contributing to MQLs and SQLs and nurtures there. Beyond that, from a brand thought leadership, content definitely plays a very significant role, and we sort of focus on that aspect as well, whether it's in terms of articles or sort of publishing some data backed reports which can sort of set us ahead, or creating certain white papers. So I would say these are 2 or 3 areas that we influence, and across different functions.
The question that comes to my mind, and often happens when content is involved in multiple actually functions, right? um, how do you determine at MoEngage that content is working as a function or not? So what are those metrics, because you're involved in multiple things, right? So are there any set metrics to define success for your content team?
Yeah, on the business goals, definitely there's very close alignment. So we are very easily able to track, what piece of content is generating what kind of, say, top of funnel engagement, or what content is helping us engage with accounts that were inactive, for example, who've been in our system but haven't say opened our emails for a while, and then we send them over something on email or social and they've opened. So we are able to measure success from that perspective in terms of the engagement that we're driving with our target audience. We're obviously able to measure success in terms of bottom of funnel conversions as well, as to what content asset is driving specific results for the business. So across the customer journey or the buyer's journey, we definitely are able to measure success very easily. Outside of this, we are definitely looking at engagement metrics, which is, on the blog, if you were to ask me, I would definitely look at the number of people that are coming back, repeat visitors. I would look at the time on page to see whether people are spending enough time and they're consuming content, because that is a very key metric versus the traffic itself. We're definitely looking at emails, where we look at the open rates or the click rates, and we're seeing what kind of topics people are clicking on. So there are multiple areas. For each area we have key metrics defined, and we are measuring each of them on the parameters, whether it's creating an impact or not.
At MoEngage, you have created a lot of methods to attribute success to content, but I want to understand, over the span of your career, how have you seen a shift when it comes to that, and how important do you think buy-in from leadership is important, and how do you deal with that challenge constantly? I feel like as content marketers, it's something we just have to constantly do.
Yeah, so luckily with MoEngage, I think that problem is sorted, because there is definitely a lot of importance right from the beginning. And we did have a lot of backing from, say, the senior management to even our head marketing, who were very clear that content is a very strategic function. It is not a back office that's going to sit and just write blogs, or an agency that's going to provide copies. So I think that context was set internally within marketing and with other functions from the beginning. That definitely gave us a lot of boost. And when you get that kind of support and there is so much backing, you obviously you have the freedom to experiment a lot. You are able to take some more risks. You have that freedom to try a few different things. I think that's definitely worked in our favor. Over years, how have I seen it change? I've definitely seen it change from being a function where attribution was difficult. We don't know what to attribute to this function outside of, say, blog traffic and SEO. How else could we measure the success of content? We really don't know. So I've seen that shift from there to sort of, okay, I think on the demand side, then slowly, I think certain companies started attributing, saying, okay, we can measure download. So that's a good metric. So I have definitely been through that transition. It's I think right now it's at an interesting stage, content marketing itself, where a lot of companies have realized that content can contribute outside of just creating good content. So and can sort of contribute to the business or the brand or thought leadership or whatever goal the content team is charged with. I think content can influence across, whether you want to break into a market or you want to strengthen your presence in a market. Based on what goals you want, the relevant content asset could be created, marketed, and it can definitely do wonders. So that is definitely shifting now. But yeah, there has been that transition that's happened over years. And luckily, I think the transition is reaching to where we are now.
So now I'd love to ask you about any big, innovative, exciting content campaigns that you've carried out. This could be at MoEngage or previously, but walk us through what a successful content campaign looks like.
If I were to share one specific campaign that comes to mind, I think something very recent over last year, which sort of was a combination of 2 or 3 challenges that we had. So back in 2019, when we saw a good amount of success with the content that we are creating within, say, the markets that we are present in, India or Southeast Asia, our bigger challenge was, how do we break into the Western markets or the European markets? And if I have to produce content, how do I make sure it resonates with the region? So one of the paths we chose was to look at content partners. So we're looking at collaboration with a host of companies over there who were in a similar MarTech space, say a mobile space, who would have some kind of data or insight that we could leverage and together build some piece of content. That way, both brands get visibility. There is sort of exchange of data from both sides of the world, because we have really good information and insights on what's happening on the mobile side or on the martech side in this part of the world. So we're looking at partners, and one of the things we did was work with Apptopia in 2020. We built out two reports with them. So the original plan, of course, early 2020 was to create some kind of a global report, and we were looking at a completely different lens. But then the pandemic struck in March, and the lockdown happened. And I remember we were midway through working with them with the data points, but we quickly sort of shifted gears, and both of us felt that whatever we were building was not making sense at all, because things had completely changed. So we quickly shifted gears. We moved to creating a COVID report for businesses, and that sort of was timed well. I think we launched it in April, when a lot of companies around the world did not know what's happening, what the trends are, what the industry is looking like, and how their competition is faring, for example, or are they the only ones who are doing well or not doing well. So a lot of these movements we could capture from different parts of the world for different regions, on the mobile side, on what's happening on the downloads, what's happening on the engagement. And that sort of did really well, because it was well timed. The audience was really looking for some kind of insights from credible sources. So that was one. The second one, and as we're building this, we realized that the market is going to change again. So it might have been a slowdown for a while, but now what people want to know is, when we open up, what do we do? So we followed that up with another ebook where we spoke about what do you do when the markets open up. So we kind of said, okay, if you have seen a slowdown, what do you do? If you have been in a similar state as before, if your industry has been unimpacted, or your app has, or your business has not been impacted, what do you do? And the third piece was, if you've seen growth now, how do you handle this? And how do you sort of make sure you're still growing even when the markets open up? So we followed.
How would you define success on these, on the three reports?
Yeah. So the first, of course, the goals that we had in terms of downloads, in terms of the reach that we wanted to get, we definitely got. So if you look at what we could create in the Western markets, the US or EU, we definitely got, I think, over 40-50% of our downloads coming from those regions. So goal number one was definitely that we get the right set of people from these markets to even consume our content. From there, I think the other metrics that I would also say is, how this content was discussed on social media. I think we saw a lot of people organically sharing some of this. People who downloaded were sharing these insights. They were including this in their decks. They were including this in their reports, or a couple of people also wrote back to us and said, can we include this in our blogs? So we got organic reach that way. We got a lot of organic traction from people, not just from in terms of downloads, but people who are reading it and finding it useful. There was a lot of social conversation going on LinkedIn, saying this is what the report says, and somebody coming in and chiming in saying, but how could this trend happen? So there was some discussion going there. We also got featured on 3 premier publications. We obviously got a lot of PR there, but 3 that we achieved and we're super proud of is Forbes, Wall Street Journal, and World Economic Forum. And we're super proud that we could get all these 3 folks to notice and write up about the report and include data points from there. So these are all factors we look at and say, okay, we've created an impact that we wanted to.
Yeah, that's absolutely amazing. So how long did it take for you guys to complete the report?
So I think the report, we dropped everything else to tell you, because what happened was, because of the lockdown, there was a complete sort of shift. We had to completely relook at any marketing activity, forget content, anything else that the marketing team itself was doing. In terms of content also, we were looking at a lot of content around growth marketing and how do you grow. And we realized that that is not going to strike a chord at all, because people are thinking about survival, and if we go and say, okay, now you start doing this to grow, it's not going to make sense. So we had to completely park all of those things aside and said, well, let's come back to this later and see when we can get back to these. So we focused all our energies into this one campaign, and it was not just the ebook that we published, what we did was, on the field marketing side, we completely transitioned to a series of video interviews or webinars that spoke about the same topic around COVID and what's happening and what different companies are seeing in their regions. Um, we also spoke to our customers, got snippets from them. We saw what campaigns they are changing, because travel companies, say Oyo for example, they had nothing to do because there was a lockdown around the world and there was nobody who was going to book rooms. So what do? So even companies like Oyo did a lot of different things. They created games on their app so their users could come in and play those games. They started sending out newsletters. So there was a lot of shift happening, and we knew that we are at the center point and we could sort of get all of this information and pass it on to people who are consuming our content. So we did a series of started creating a series of blogs where every week we would post updates, saying this is what's happening and this is what some companies in these verticals in these regions are doing. So we could put out this customer stories. So we started doing all of this. So our complete focus sort of was on this for the entire couple of quarters.
So, it's interesting that you mentioned all these types of content. And of course, during the pandemic, suddenly content was such a buzzword because a lot of companies couldn't do anything other than create content, right? So, um, but when we talk about MoEngage and the content you guys created, that report, the ebook, um, that brings me to a question around B2B content marketing, right? So it's generally perceived as the most boring thing in the world. And what how possibly can you make enterprise marketing content interesting, right?
Content is very different from B2C content. But with the larger buying cycles that B2B has, the impact of content is equally higher on any kind of business conversations or even sort of engaging the audience. Because in a B2C, when you're creating content, probably it's slightly more short term because you're creating it for that campaign, for that season, for that festival. So it's probably going to be viewed at that point and then it might not find much use later. Versus on B2B, you're investing a lot more time because the longevity of that content piece itself could be higher. How do we make this interesting? There are many ways. Number one, I think some of the most fun content we've created is, if you've seen a particular trend, we could sort of quickly catch on to that trend, just like the B2C folks do. So I remember we created, when Stranger Things season 2 was coming up, we created something called as the upside down of marketing. And we went on the theme on everything that could go wrong if you don't have the right engagement platform. So it is B2B content, but it is not as boring as it should be. Similarly, more recently, I think what we've done on app reviews. So when we find that a particular app is catching a lot of traction, there's a lot of growth in a particular space, we've written about these apps. We wrote something about Super Bowl recently. We covered Mitro when it was catching a lot of downloads and that entire trend was there. We wrote about the WhatsApp privacy policy. So writing about current events, it's also beneficial for your audience because they are getting a different perspective, or they are also catching some insights. You're sharing data with them on what's happening on the trends. At the same time, you are sharing, you're doing something on the current topics. So that is another way we've seen content really work. Third one, of course, we had started a series called as Marketing Mondays, where we would collect a bunch of news topics which are very, very current and put them into a short video, I think under 3 minutes, and then release that. So there are different ways you can make content fun, and it's fun for someone who's producing it, it's fun for someone who's consuming it.
Just if you can talk a bit about the biggest challenges in content marketing today and how can marketers overcome these challenges?
Up until a year back or so, I would have told you that the biggest challenge is for content to get the credibility it should, to sort of be ranked as a serious function and all of that. But I think that shifted to the other extreme now. There's too much focus. There's a lot of increase in budgets, increase in teams. So as a content marketer, I would say the challenge now is to have that rationale and make sure that you're making use of this attention you're given, making use of the budgets you're given, and building good content. So for me, the number one challenge is going to be not getting carried away with all the positives that are happening for the space, and as a marketer think through and still be focused on creating good content. I think a lot of companies or teams might sort of get overwhelmed and say, okay, let's start creating more content. I think to realize that more content doesn't mean success. It could be less, but it's still good content that is going to give you the same or maybe more amount of success. That is going to be the key. And how do you create differentiating content for yourself? So because everybody is going to now produce a lot more content, whether it's video or written or even podcasts. So how do you make sure your content stands out? These for me are the bigger challenges any content marketer would face.
That's very interesting, I think. But do you think this sudden sort of boost in content, this is a bubble that will burst, or do you think it is now here to stay and is just a good thing?
I think it is here to stay, and fingers crossed. I hope it's so, and it's definitely a good thing. The reason is because content is extremely high on ROI. Unlike any other paid or any other marketing tactic where you need to invest a lot, content doesn't need that kind of investment. If you want to create good content, you really don't need to spend a lot. You might spend on the distribution based on the reach and the sort of audience you have, but even that over a period of time can be brought down because you've got a sufficient audience, and if you've been creating good content that sort of the audience enjoys, then you're definitely going to get that. So in terms of ROI, content is definitely high. So I don't think it's a bubble that's going to that's going to burst. Second, I don't think content can be automated or sort of completely sort of turned into a tactical department where 2 or 3 things and you just keep doing that, because one, your audience is changing. Every 6 months or so, your audience is shifting, whether it's in terms of what they like, whether it's in terms of the knowledge levels that they have and the kind of information they're consuming itself. So something that I create, say, 6 months back might not completely be in the same sort of interest for the audience today. The learning level or the knowledge level might have improved, or their use cases might have changed, their problem statements might have changed. So from that perspective, there is always going to be need for that content, and you definitely need people to keep that eyes and ears on the markets, keep your focus on the audience, and sort of bring in that perspective. So I definitely see this as a function that's going to create larger impacts over time.
Thanks, Akshata. Had a great chat.